My name is Sandra Hayes from Teagasc, based in the Thurles office, and we have
Dermot Campion, Managing Director of Germinal Ireland. And probably why we decided to do this, Sandra, was COVID and everything else like that.
Yeah, we have restrictions that we have to adhere to, and we still want to get the message out about lots of different topics. So the webinar is a very efficient way of getting that information out there.
Yes.
Yeah. So
it's our life maybe forever, has it?
I don't know about that. Hopefully we'll get it back to some normality, but until normality that we know, with farm walks and stuff like that, come back, the webinar is the next best thing of getting the information out there. So what we're going to do today is we're going to ask you, there's a Q&A box, which some of you have very nicely used already for us to tell us that we're up and running properly. We'd really encourage interaction, both myself and Dermot. We respond better to questions because then we know what to give the answers to. So we'd encourage you, as we go through the presentation that Dermot's going to give now in a minute, your questions. I'll try and keep an eye on it and hopefully answer the questions if we can as we're going along. And if not, we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and we'll run on time from 7:30 to 8:30.
I think we'll make it more of a general chat, Sandra. I don't need big, long presentations.
Yeah, that's the aim of it. Have a chat like as if we were at a meeting.
That's all right. There's only the two of us.
There's only the two of us. As far as we know, there's only the two of us. Okay. So Dermot, if you want to get started.
Yeah. It's probably that time of the year that people say it was. I was thinking of putting in a brassica crop. It's probably a bit too late for kale. We'd say kale should be coming in from late April maybe to the middle of July. So we're gone really past that period. If it's too late for kale, you've probably gone to a hybrid like Red Start or a rape.
If somebody did put in kale, Dermot, what would happen if they put it in tomorrow morning?
You'd still see kale is a slower growing crop. So it needs about 120 days to get to maturity, but then it's hitting the back end, so that it slows down. While a Red Start, for instance, is only about 90 days to maturity. So if you go in August, September, October, you have a very good crop. Rape is the same as a slower growing, so the hybrid probably works best at this time of the year.
Perfect. Okay.
Really, brassicas years ago were used as a reseeding program or a policy. And if you actually go to New Zealand, which you have done, you would actually have brassicas going in between grass, but not going from grass to grass, just to break up the old sod and things like that. So just as not everyone has a reseeding policy. You'd be very surprised, as you know.
Well, you mentioned the last time I was talking to you, only 3% is done every year.
Believe it or not, Sandra, it can be less. It's between 2% and 3%. I wish it was 3%. Wow. There's probably in Munster it's a lot higher, and in the dairy industry it's very high. It cannot get up to 3%. If we are going to grow more grass, feed more cows or whatever, we probably need to reseed. But just going to brassica, put it in on a rotation. Because we often have feed for autumn and winter, it's a way of actually getting a bit of bulk in. If you sold a hybrid at this time of the year, you would get somewhere between 6 and 8 ton of dry matter. I don't know, would you get that out of a grass?
Not at this stage, no.
You'd be looking to get 3 maybe. So it does give a bit of bulk. Some people actually do put in brassicas for late season, and I was saying that to you before, that they might put where they want to stretch their grass, maybe September, October, and they'll have a brassica in earlier and graze it daily. And by grazing it daily, roughly you're giving them a 16% protein feed, and then you could go back to your grass. That's another option.
Yeah, that's something that shouldn't be underestimated, because protein is an expensive feed to buy, you know.
I think actually myself, and we probably spoke about this, that coming down the line, we'll probably have to produce more protein on our farms.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
red clover or clovers, and again, the world is changing, and protein coming from other parts of the world, I don't think is sustainable. So we're all looking at that. Just 2018, we had, everyone remembers the drought, and I bet you a lot of the people that are listening in, it was probably the worst year ever that I remember anyway. And actually for grass seed sales was probably one of the worst. It just wasn't done. People just couldn't afford to take out anything.
Yeah.
We probably sold more brassicas that year and to fill the feed void that was there for the winter. There was stuff grazed, and there was like stuff in bales and zero grazed, and people were very happy with it. So market is there, and a lot of people, every farmer is different. But it grazed outside mostly. But it can be zero grazed and it can be baled. It takes a little bit more management to do them things.
Yeah.
But you would hope by growing a brassica in between a grass, you might actually think of what's coming next, and the grass that's coming next, you're going to create some organic matter. You're getting rid of that old butter grass that's quite difficult. You're stopping maybe slugs that might affect to go from grass to grass. So it actually helps there as well. But of course, the big one is actually reducing labor, machinery, and housing. But still, we talk about housing. You still should have housing just in case.
From a cross compliance point of view.
We're not saying that everyone should do this and just forget about housing, but cross compliance is there as well, and it's the future as well. And we have to put up with it.
I think the most important point you have there is the one that you're going to come to, is the improving the soil structure. It's that's dismissed. When you talk about, like when you mentioned to me, the first thing that came into my head when you mentioned we'll talk about brassica crops, filling the fodder budget gap. And as I said to you, I have done a number of fodders already, and a lot of people in the area that both you and I cover are in a very positive situation. Thankfully, the drought earlier on this hasn't affected winter budgets. But a big thing is improving soil structure going down the line. As you said, in all those points you mentioned, like turning down the sod, weed problem, but the improving the soil structure, we have to look under the ground as well as on top of the ground. And this is one way the brassica crop will do that for us.
Some people actually say plough for this and then sow and then plough it back up. These are things that people did, our ancestors did, and there were no fools.
No.
We were going back doing things again, what we did years and years ago. But soil, for me, is probably the key. I'm probably always on about it. Sort out your pH, sort out your P's and K's, and get rid of your pans. But anyway, we can't actually farm. We won't be able to produce grass or crops. And grass is probably the biggest crop that's out there, but we can't actually produce unless our soil is right.
Okay. We move on. Spring, I think.
Planning for the brassica, like it's probably the most important thing, and you just don't willy-nilly pick, I'm going to sow it tomorrow. You have to do a bit of planning. When do you need the crop? Do I need it for the summer, the autumn, the winter? Am I short of feed? The land the field I'm going to use, a lot of people might pick a silage field. They're after taking second cut. It's not producing a lot of grass. If I put in a crop now, will I get 4, 6, 8 ton of dry matter, and then I'll reseed in the spring? You've often said to me, a bad autumn reseed, is it worth it? I'd rather see someone do this, and then, especially if it goes late in the season, and go back and sow. You have a better chance of getting a better reseed in the spring if everything comes right. I know we run into droughts and stuff, but at least we have time to sort it out if you do your reseeding in the spring. And of course, how much land?
Dermot, just a question that's after coming, that's kind of appropriate. I'll just put it to you. Do you undo all the soil structure improvements by grazing over winter?
It depends what you call by grazing. We wouldn't be advising anyone to go into a field and muck it up, that the muck turns to water.
Okay.
They used to say, if you put your foot into the ground and you pull it out and no water goes into your footprint.
Okay.
But if it's turning into pure slush, no, I wouldn't.
Okay. So that's why this screen is very important when you're planning, your site, and your aspect is very important in answering question as well.
that after, but it's probably one of the most important things you probably of planning a brassica. Like the site selection. It really ideally would like to be free draining. I say avoid steep slopes, and that real reason is that if you have a steep slope, you have a lot of water running down. We'd always say graze from the top down, because the water running through the crop and the waste is running through the crop and not going down to the bottom. I've seen guys actually doing it, and they actually started at the bottom. Before they knew it, after a couple of weeks, all the water and all the muck was at the bottom, and it was absolute slop. They had to get out of it. So it's a bit of planning. And water, again, there's the big one. We want to look after our water courses and rivers, and you don't want any of this running into them. So bit of planning where you're going to put it.
Even if there was a water course, though, like be careful when you're actually sowing the crop or tilling the crop. You can leave a margin, meter and a half out, and create a kind of a wildgrass buffer. That
no problem. I would actually definitely agree with that. Because even doing these things, you can leave a bit of the headland. It's probably not a bad thing anyway for wildlife. We're on about brassicas, and that there is this myth. I say it's a myth that there's club root resistant kales.
Okay.
There's no such thing. Some people might tell you there is. I wish there was. I'll tell you the same then, but it's not true. There's always a chance. So you're supposed to do a brassica every year in 5. It's like a bee family part. So you really should be using this, and don't be going into the same field year on year on year on year. Some people do and get away with it. But there is a chance.
You have said to me before, a common question will come back to you. Oh, I didn't get the yield, and I followed all the instructions you said, and I put on the correct fertilizer, and I didn't get the yield. And when you look back, they've put the kale in 3 years running.
Yeah. And the other thing to have is a field of weeds, because you will have weeds inside in this, and then when you spray it off, or the first year you have it, and some people just go in and don't actually cultivate and let it green up and spray it off. They just go and sow that crop, and
again and again.
They have weed and more weed and more weed. Sharlock is a big problem, especially on kale. Okay. It can hit a drought, and there can be problems there. So slight selection is very, very important.
Okay.
Just on about sowing, just get ready. So a massive believer of soil testing, as you know. I would do it about 3 months from the last application of P&K. If you're going to plow, don't test until you plow it over. Take your soil test then and see what's there. Of course, spray off your ground. I'm always on about the 3 Fs. Fine, fertile, and as the old man used to say, cycle the bike across it if you can, because that's really in any reseed, like even in grass seed or these, it's so important to have those right. If you don't do them all right, they can have problems. Broadcast
might be a bit difficult with me cycling over on a bike now. There might be a bit of a dint in the soil. It might be that firm.
Yeah, well. Well, I won't tell it for that, but in a drought situation, we'd have problems on drought situation that it doesn't matter what roller you use. It was so spongy and no water in it when you rolled it. It just sponged back up. Okay. And there are a lot of problems on reseeding done, or any of these crops done in a drought situation. So it can be difficult and lead to problems. Broadcasting or direct drilling, we'd always use a little bit more seed in a broadcasting situation. So if I was doing, say, red start, I'd probably sow it around 3.5, and if I was direct drilling, I'd probably go 2.5, 3 kgs. The lime, all brassicas love pH, love nitrogen, they love P and K. So you have to start out the
what pH are you looking at to get at?
Ideally around 7, but 6.5. Right. 6.5 is the ideal. It's happy, but we'd have some guys that would think about reseeding or sowing brassicas in 5.6s. It's trouble. Fertilizer you put on it, it's not going to take it up that well. No. Good crop. Your purple leaves, your sign of a deficiency, even though it's not in the ground. It's just a problem with growing. It's stress.
Okay.
The granulated lime, I'd probably say that for anyone doing a direct drill, they should actually put out some lime. It works quick. Everything that's dying is releasing an inorganic acid, and the granulated lime actually breaks it down quicker and helps the germination.
It's like
helps it helps break it down. But the seed, I would never sow too deep. If you can actually sow it on top of the ground, I'd rather see it on top of the ground rolled in than trying to put it down under the clay. Some people make the mistake. It's so
they bury it.
Yeah, they bury it and it doesn't work. And it's a bit of a disaster actually. But like grassy can happen the same thing.
Okay.
As a believer of rolling, I often say roll, sow and roll again. I know some guys out there that don't actually roll a field ever.
Okay.
It will affect the germination on any seed, anything up to 3 to 4 weeks, maybe longer. So rolling is very important. Soil contact, seed to soil. Then there is your pests, diseases.
Yeah.
Just keep an eye on them,
Pigeon pest?
Pigeons, you're dead right. That's probably they're actually getting worse. I've noticed crows and pigeons around, but they love cabbage. So it's all part of the Brassica family, so they will attack. You'd have
and slugs.
Slugs can be there as well, especially in the direct drilling.
Okay, that's where the rolling would come in. Would be important, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and
okay.
Not too often you'd see them very bad. You'd often let them take a bit of it, but if you fertilize it on, they actually usually grows out. If you sow it at a nice high, the 3.5 kg, you have enough seed there that it'll actually compete. And slugs and especially the cabbage fly, they do a bit of damage, but I never really worried that much about it.
Okay, just before you move on to the next one, Dermot, there are a couple of questions come in.
Yep.
One on the Sherlock heavy and kale. Is there anything that can be done? So that must be somebody that has Sherlock or kale in already with the Sherlock. Anything that can be done?
There is a post-emergent spray you can use on kale, but you're talking about just after sowing.
Okay.
It used to be called Butazone S in my time, if I remember right.
Okay.
Other than that, there isn't anything. I've seen guys that the Sherlock got so high that they went in and topped the weed. This is theory and practice. This is from the side. They actually led up their topper up high and cut the top of the Sherlock off over the crop, and it came. It was just choking it out at the bottom. But if you can do that, I would probably advise it. But often a little bit fertilizer will drive it on, because Sherlock will, and those annual weeds will come to a stage that they'll go to seed, and once they go to seed, they're dead. So maybe a little bit more fertilizer. Kale can have problems in drought situations of those reasons, what you have to do.
Okay, next, there's another question here then. Using a stale seed bed, is it worthwhile for brassicas?
A stale seed bed? What do you mean by stale seedbed now?
Is it worthwhile for brassicas?
Well, what I would, if I was going from, it's not a bad idea to spray off your ground. Give it, if you think there's going to be lots of weed, you give it a run of a disc or something. Let it green up and then spray it, and you'll get rid of an awful lot of your weeds there. So see. Some guys, as I said, might go for brassica. So I'd be advising on at the end of the first graze, and say they're going to sow again, till their soil up, let it green up, spray it with their glyphosate or whatever they want to do, and then sow a couple of weeks later. It is an awful lot cleaner.
Okay, because there was another comment in that also using Butazone S post sowing, applied 24 hours after sowing. I think you mentioned that already in your previous comment.
Yeah.
There's a question there about a fertilizer plan for a crop of red start. We'll get to that in your next slide. And in the future, where there's no glyphosate, how do you intend to grow brassicas successfwe? I think you mentioned before.
I think as an industry, we could be under pressure, but brassicas were growing 100 years ago in Ireland and
Mm-hmm.
around the world. So maybe we have to go back and start learning how they did it. A lot of them would actually do with the plow. So you turn over what's on top of the ground.
Yeah.
Whatever comes up, it's usually weed free, and then you'll be able to sow your crop. So but the problem is they're trying to stop us plowing. So
Yeah.
Maybe
it's something neither we can't solve.
No, and I don't know. From what I'm hearing, there could be something else coming. Like glyphosate could be gone. It will go probably, but some other chemical might come that's more environmentally friendly. We don't know at this stage. It is a major problem for the industry, for the tillage man, this min-till. I don't know. I hope.
All right. We'll move on to the next one. We'll follow up then with the rest of the questions. A few more still coming in.
This is just crop selection. It's just a very handy diagram. And everyone, I suppose we should say this webinar will be on online a couple of days time, and people will be able to go back in and see all this presentation. But this is just a very good synopsis of kales and brassicas and rapes and swedes and leafy turnip, and when do I sow them, sowing rates, utilization, what to expect, crude protein. Of course, the ME is probably, I'm always talking about ME, but if you have high ME feed from your local merchant, that usually tells you which is one of the best. So as you say, like kale would give you the highest tonnage, the highest quality, the highest ME. So it's kale sown early is a very, very, very good crop as regards grazing over the winter. But it doesn't really suit some people because they often want to take 2 cuts of silage off the ground, or the field are under pressure. So that's why the brassicas, that's what I believe something like Red Start has taken a lot of the market as regards brassicas out there.
So somebody with an outblock that cuts second cut silage, that's, after doing it in the last week, 10 days, and they know that it could do with a reseed, and as you and I both would know that, the later reseeds can be very hit and miss. An option could be to put in a crop like this, for the winter time.
Like there's lots of time, really. I like to have mine, if I was going in by the end of July and even early August, you still have a good crop. It depends what the man above sends after that, but you could really have serious tonnage before the end of the year. You're talking about a good, like 8 ton. I'd be very disappointed if I was only getting the 6. That's why if anyone ever rings here and they're asking about what tonnage, I'd always give them the lowest value, and then you're actually surprised if you get more and you're happy. It's there are lots of options, and they're probably the options that are there.
Particularly like your silage ground, it's getting a lot of heavy machines, the slurry spreader, the spreader, the heavy machines taken off the silage, a couple of times a year. You don't know, as you say, unless you get a shovel and you start digging and you see there could be an unknown pan there, and brassicas could be the option for land like that.
I think more and more of us are going out and digging holes. And actually, it's actually what we all know what's going on above the ground, but a lot of us don't have a clue what's going on under the ground. So I think it's more harm to actually dig a hole.
And find out. The other noticeable thing on that slide there would be, to me, the crude protein. There's, remarked on one of the first slides, anything from 10 to 12 with the Swedes, but the 16 to 18 with the kale, and 18 to 20% with the brassica and the rape.
And on that as well, Sandra, that it's the stalk is really only about 12-13% crude protein.
Okay.
A lot of fiber, and the leaf can be anything up to 22, 24, 25, somewhere around there. So that's just if you're giving them a graze every day, that's what you should be getting. You're getting between 16 and 18. Just one point as well, like ourselves in Germany, we'd always be on about grass. We'd say we always talk about quality and quality variety. The same goes for brassicas. There's a thing called leaf to stem ratio. You've often heard me talking about, and it means that the more leaf, the more quality in the leaf, and the less stem. So the higher the leaf to stem ratio, the better. it tells you it's good. Yield doesn't mean a lot. And there is varieties out there that are actually very high in yield. And if they're high in yield, usually for me, it means there's about 3 leaves at the top of it and there's nothing underneath, only hard stalk. The stalk is the quality. And some actually are only game cover kales, and people think that.
I think a lot of people get mixed up with those varieties when they think of the game crop one, or maybe the ones in the wild bird cover and the glass scheme.
Yeah. And
so these are different. These varieties are different.
Well, we actually
it's more leaf.
We actually sell our Maris Kestrel as a game cut. It doesn't really matter what does it matter if it's 10 foot tall or 6 foot tall. The bird is only about 6 inches tall. There's no need for it to be so high.
Yeah.
But if you have more leaf, even they're actually hiding down underneath. I remember being in New Zealand, and they actually said that the last 6 inches of some kales and brassicas is like eating a timber pallet, that there is no quality nothing inside it, and you see them leaving it and forcing them. They just don't want it. I know the guys in UK or GB, they did a trial and they put in, I think it was something like 10 different varieties in a field. So some of their competition and some of ours, there was difference in heights, but when the animals went in, they did it with sheep, and sheep usually would eat the pallet. They actually, some of them actually too black clay, while others had stalk on them, and they just wouldn't eat it. They just wouldn't. Hard. You just don't.
Yeah. No, you don't want to be doing that.
Quality again is a very important part, and we'd be always advocating that in anything we try and sell.
Okay, I'll just have a quick look at the questions there. Let's see. We did that one. Just a comment, pity no one knows how to plough anymore. And what is the best time to graze lambs on crop of interval intended for breeding in order to reduce photosynthesis risks? We might bring that back in on a slide kind of covering things like that. So we'll try and remember to make. So you might move on to the next one, Dermot.
Okay. That's just the NPK guidelines that you're sowing a big crop, but that I wouldn't be really pushing it. I would say a guy sowing brassica now would, if his P's and K's are okay, I'd probably be going with 2-3 bags of 10-10-20 under the course the nitrates directives, and put the nitrogen up between 80 and say about 80 units. But I like to see the nitrogen split in 2 at least, and maybe 3 at sowing 5 weeks later, and maybe 5 weeks after that. I think.
Why is it important to do that, Dermot?
Well, I find that sometimes when we've used the word, you're horsing on the fertilizer, someone could go to waste. I'd rather see little and often in anything. I think that the crop will do better with little and often and having it split. The longer you can make that plant grow, it'll grow and get more out of the plant. But if you just harvest it, it grows quickly, and then it just starts slowing down. And I don't think it's a good thing.
It's a bit like us all. We like breakfast, dinner, and tea.
Yes.
Not all at the one time.
And some of us actually gorge ourselves, and it's the opposite for us. But
we don't feel too good.
No. But that's just a guideline. But I still go back that you can, at this time of the year, 70, 80 units of nitrogen and P's and K's. Slurry is an option. Farmyard manure. I'm a big, I'm a massive fan of we waste slurry. I'd rather have a half tank inside in the yard and use it more sparingly than just destroy my place in the first couple of weeks of February, March, and kill all my worms.
I suppose the important thing with that is that to understand the value of what's in your tanker or in your manure spreader, not add all of the fertilizer that you're outlining here on it. That's you want to compensate one against the other. If you've got P and K in your cattle slurry, you don't need to add all of what you've recommended here for the different soil types.
No, I think we probably will be forced down the route as well to use more of our available. But I do think we actually probably need to test our slurry as well. I think
we can't. We do that. We've done that at discussion, and it's amazing. you know, the difference. People don't realize that we use one bucket of slurry, we just dilute it down. We don't say to the farmers, it all looks the same, but there's different values in it.
Yeah.
Then we have a chart to give us a guideline, and there is a difference. So, you know, if the same tank has the same animals in it every year, and you've got it tested, you know, it's a good guide that, you know what P and K is in that particular tank of slurry.
Yeah, I think it's got to do with the factor how much feed you're feeding and how much quality of silage and all other factors that are not, but I think probably something you'll see more and more being done.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned to me before, the reason for the P and the K in some of the lower indexes is important is for the seed to establish. It needs the P and K to germinate, you know.
Like even having
I'll just put a bit of nitrogen on.
Yeah,
but
I would never.
On slurry, they need P and K fertilizer.
If we were sowing a crop of brassica, I would actually say still use one bag of P and K. If one bag, then you can top up. But I'd like to. It's to break down to get the root going to take up the slurry. That's all.
Okay.
All
Perfect. Right. Perfect. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Dermot.
Biggest one of all, cross compliance.
Yes.
Major, and probably yourselves would be advocates of it, and that's the way it should be. That it's here, we have to put up with it and get on with it. But nobody wants to sow a crop that the animal health is affected. I think most animals will be actually happier to be outside grazing a crop, and they're healthier. And
yes, I agree.
The live weight gain can be good, or if not better, but when they go to the spring, to go to grass, I like to see them going from brassica to spring grazing. They're often the first ones they just put on more weight and they just hit the ground running. But very important. Soil again, waterways, the runoff, the run back area. We probably haven't mentioned this, but we come to another slide in a minute. But it's probably, if you're going to sow 5 acres of a brassica, you really should have 5 acres of a run back. That if for cross compliance, that's what they want. They don't want you seeing you just inside in one little area. They know this is actually coming to our friends in New Zealand as well. I was out in on a farm there about 2 or 3 years ago, and the environmental is going to hit them as well. It's the world again is changing.
Or has started to.
Yes, like the nitrates thing is massive out there, and water. We just said shelter. Sometimes we forget about. We cut all our ditches and we wonder why our animals standing in the corner of the field. But it does help to have a bit of shelter around.
Definitely.
Shifting the stock daily, we would be advocates of that. Like even twice, like because you're if you should move them every day, they're going on to a dry bit every day. If it's even when wet weather, at least that piece that's going on to is dry. And
but sure, that's even good husbandry because you're getting to see the stock every day. It's not
and some lads will
doesn't mean you don't see them.
Some lads will even do it twice a day. And that's for 2 things: to see how the animals are doing, because you will see when you move, see if they're sick. So it is advisable to move at least once a day. The tractors in the field, the major one, you'll come to that about having our bales in the field at time of sowing. The fact is that when you have the bales in the field and set up for the fibre, you're not going in with this big tractor and destroying the place on a wet day. I'd rather have more bales in the field. I can sort them out in February and take them out on a dry day if I want. Going down to a field and after doing so much great work and then throwing bales in over hedges and whatever, and it's pure muck. But like common sense, that's probably the most important. So that highlighted common sense approach and the story.
Yeah, just in adding on that, like the main cross compliance things we would come to on like your original slide where you talk about, you know, planning the crop. Farmers would kind of not think it out and would decide to put it in on an out farm. It might be, let's say, 5 acres of an out farm, and they put the kale or the rape in on the whole 5 acres, and then they end up that they don't have a grass run back. And like the department can see that from, you know, your basic payment maps, the field, you don't own or rent or farm any other land around, so it can be a red alert. So, and then putting this, you know, like you said in your crop rotation point, putting the same crop in again and again. You know, it's very important that if you were picking an field, an out farm, and it was 5 acres, well, then you'd be only doing 2.5 of your brassica crop and 2.5 of your grass.
Yeah. Very
The
important.
other thing I'd mention is, another thing I'd mention is cross compliance. A lot of people think the brassica crops, we're not promoting this, that it's a get out clause from lack of housing. So if you had 20 weanling heifers or 20 bullocks out on your brassica crops for the wintertime, you need to have the appropriate housing still available for them. If you don't use it, that's fine. And if they're not causing any problem inside and they're healthy and they're well, and there's no, soil damage, there's no problem in having them outside, but you must have the housing for them. And that's a question we get asked quite a lot in the office,
Some will have to go in, but what I see are guys that have a bit of beef or something, and they want to get rid of some of the stock from, they have them in early, so September, October, November, December, they go into the factory. Even so, then they'll actually bring in the stock if they have to. But yeah, we would be, of course. It's so important, cross compliance, that we're that's the future of our soil again.
Yeah.
This is one that I usually get asked. I'd say at this time of the year, I say some of the other guys here that work with us, at least just ask once a day. I've 7 acres, what will it grow, how many will it feed? This is just a simple way of doing it.
Okay.
Squared, large bag, garden shears, weigh it. And the simple thing then, whatever it weighs, multiply by 10,000, and the dry matter, that can range, and that's where the problem can be. You can have it from 16, 20. So there's a big difference in 15 and 20, and it's just
when would the crop, like if somebody had kale planted, a couple of weeks at this stage, they're not going to weigh it now, but when would the opportunity to know when to weigh it?
Well, most crops about 120 days after sowing, you have a fair germinate, and that's when it really is hitting peak. So if I sowed in May or even the first week of June, you'd say July, August, September, October. So you'd be thinking of going in anyway. So days or a week before you're thinking of going. It hasn't grown much only in the last while, but it's simple enough. That's a colleague in GB, Helen. It's, as you can see, she just took out a meter squared, she weighed it, and then it gives you a very good idea. That's actually a field of kale from what I remember. Yeah. This is probably the complicated way of doing it. I'll give you
this is what everyone asks. How long will it last, Dermot?
How long will it last?
How long will it last?
Sometimes you say how long is a piece of string, but so wheeling is there. So we're saying a weight 280. They would eat roughly 8 kilograms per day. We're saying the brassica should be 70% of the diet. It often can be a lot more. I remember it was a trial done with Eva Kendi, I think in Moore Park, and she had some on 100%. But anyway, it can be done because there's a lot of fiber in the stalk. But so at 70%, then it's 5.6. The number of animals, we're saying 25.
Just in case anyone's asking there, Dermot, the 70%, the other 30 is your round silage that you have.
Round bale silage, my straw, something with a bit of fiber. It's very important. When you're feeding any protein, you would actually get in some fiber. It actually, what it helps is actually to slow the gut down and actually helps itself. Very, very important. And you'll probably see the changeover from, say, you're going from grass to brassica. It takes about 3 weeks, and that initial period they'll eat an awful lot more silage. I wouldn't be putting in top quality silage, I wouldn't be putting in silage of 76. It's more haylage, or roughage. But they will eat an awful lot more, and after a while, then you'll notice that they eat less and they just move on. And once they're used to it, it does take a little bit, anything from 10 to 20 days before they so slowly to acclimatize into it. So we're just saying 125 multiplied by the 5.6, 140 kilograms. That's 80% utilization. And I said earlier on, you can actually get hunting up to 90. When you see there's no stalk left, and very little.
Yeah.
You're actually going very high in the utilization. But then on the wet day, you'll actually see, or less, I should say. So we're just going to give an average of 80.
Okay.
So 175, the meter length, how long is the field then? And then you worked out for this one, it's 1.5 meters per day for my 25. But that's actually probably the right way to do it. But then a lot of people say to me, it's a bit complicated. Well, is there any other way? And it's a very simple way of doing it. I'm a simple person.
Okay.
I'll often say to them, how many days do you want those animals to stay in the field? And they'd say, oh, I need 120 days or 100, whatever it is. I say, often, best thing to do is walk the length of the field.
Right.
Divide it by the amount of days. And then you know exactly that when 120 days come, when the day they start and they finish, it's going to be a certain date. It's going to be March. And that actually takes away a lot of the stress. Just put out your bales, or put out as much bales as you think you need.
Yeah, you mentioned that, yeah.
You'll eat more in the spring, or as you start, and you'll eat less. But at least having more bales, you can sort it out. But having
Plus, if you do that way, and you get, let's say you start in November, you could review it, let's say the first week of January, and kind of go, well, have they got half the field eaten or have they not?
Yeah.
Do you know whether you need to speed it up or slow it down?
That's up to yourself, but again, I've seen the month of January and having very little left.
Yeah.
I hate coming to the end of February and seeing half the field is still there. And that can be a major problem, because tendency then is actually to try and hurry it on. And they're only walking out over, they're wasting.
Wasting crop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just the grazing, like they're major things. Little problems when you're starting is actually very slowly. Don't ever actually let them gorge themselves when they're young, when they're going into a new crop, because it's like going into a shed of barley. It's very high in protein. If they gorge themselves, they can get sick. So you try and give them a small amount at a time and build them up. Once they get used to it, then they'll actually knock you down trying to get into it.
Yeah.
Strip grazing, long narrow face. Some people will back fence.
Okay. Why would they do that?
I wouldn't advise back fencing too early. I like to see, unless it was a very long face, because you can actually puddle up again. Maybe if you were actually maybe a week or every 2 weeks. So not having going back over the same area can be done. Not the end of the world. But the double fencing will show you that in a minute. It actually helps when you're moving the fence to have another one in front, because when they break through you, and they will break through you, they're not going down to the end of the field, and you're running around with wet legs and not very happy, because
no one wants to do that.
No. But water supply, very important. I know they mightn't drink an awful lot of it when it's wet, but still to have water is very, very, very important.
Okay, so the key thing there is the transition from whether they came from, probably grass, autumn grass, they're going on this new crop. You have your grass run back, and you slowly introduce animal you have to it over a 7 to 10 day period, giving them, a small allocation.
And don't be afraid if there's an animal in that field that doesn't really get on with it and is a bit finicky. Take her out or take him out. Just not all animals and not all people are the same. We just mightn't like everything. So it's no harm. If you see a problem, sort it out sooner rather than later. And you will see that happen, especially when you're moving it every day. You'll see if the animal is a bit. The brassica 70%, fibre 30%, sloping fields, Laufin run back. Bolus, probably one we said earlier, that there is no mineral whatsoever, no iodine or cobalt or whatever, and it's no harm to have your animals bolus before they go into the field, because you're sorted. Especially we often see it's in calf heifers, or maybe actually wheeling heifers that they're going to go to the bull next year. So if you have them sorted out, you're better having your bolus sorted with minerals, especially for them.
It's no different, Dermot. Like if you have your pit of silage, and that's what the livestock is going to eat for 100 days, 120 days. It's a lot of people would get the mineral analysis done and would adjust their minerals accordingly. So it's the same here with you're just given a bolus to protect the animal as well, because
Yeah.
status could be compromised in the silage as well. So it doesn't mean that, oh, I'll get away with it by giving them the kale or the rape. They still have to, you know, look after the mineral status of the animals.
It's just because it's a brassica doesn't mean it's any way different. It's
No.
I like to see it consumed before the end of February, because we have this. The crop can go to seed, and it can be a problem. I get phone calls, oh, it's gone to flower. Is there a problem? Officially, you're supposed to take the animal out because it is a very highly toxic, the seeds in the pod. But from talking to farmers out there, a lot of them they say when the animal is in the field and has been with the crop as it grew over and changed, developed, the animal got used to it and was only being fed every day a certain allocation. It could be okay, but officially it can be toxic. I wouldn't let a new animal into the kale. No way. It could be dead in the morning. It just won't be used to it.
Grant. Okay. Wait, before you go on to the next one, I'll just see if there's anything there that we need to question there. Kale sown 4 weeks for sheep. Should we begin grazing it? Could grow too strong for sheep.
Nah, if it's only 4 weeks in, there's no problem with kale being 2 foot tall with sheep. Especially someone like the Maris kestrel isn't a massive tall plant. It's got an awful lot of leaf, and they actually will graze it out. I wouldn't really worry about it. No, I wouldn't be grazing it yet. No.
Okay, and there's another one there that I saw. Can you use urea to top dress kale?
Yeah, you can. Well, protected urea, even better. But urea, especially if the plant is growing well, it's because there's lots of moisture at the bottom. It actually works probably better. But I do like a bit of sulfur in my fertilizer. So that's why I'd often say use the nitrogen plus sulfur. It does help the nitrogen into the plant. Well,
you can get protected urea with sulfur as well. So
So
look for as well.
It's cheaper. So
yeah, great.
Just a balanced diet. It's probably just the fiber, the poor silage, not quality silage. It's called a scratch factor, that it actually helps the stomach, and that's why you're using the fiber as regards anything else.
Okay.
Just the feeding the minerals, as I said, there's nothing in it. So copper, cobalt, iodine, and selenium, probably very important, especially for probably heifers that you're thinking of doing a bit of breeding with. I feel, for me, it probably suits a weanling more than anything, because they do less damage to the ground. They're healthier. They go straight. They get hairier. They can actually go to the bull easier because they're a bigger animal when they get the grass in February, March, April. But I'd still look after the old bolus if you can. But talk to your advisor, your veterinary. This is Bob, just a field plan, and makes it very simple. At one side we have the bales, we have our water trucks.
By the way, we know all fields don't look like this, Dermot.
No, they do where I come from. But just that you have that bit of a run back, you start there, and you introduce very slowly. But we're on about today's fence, tomorrow's fence, and actually, if you could have 3 fences.
3 fences. There's 3 fences in that one. There is,
Yeah, there is actually. There's another one up along. But you could do that if you wanted to, but you're going to move today's fence up to the next one the day after. But it's just got to do with I've seen it so many times. Cattle, after they get so used to it, they love it, and they'll knock you over to try and get into the next bit. So having another fence inside, it actually will save you a lot of running. And I guarantee that if you don't have it, you will be running someday around that field. But
you're talking about three real fences you need there.
It's really, you can move today's to the front, so you're only moving it on, But an electric fence, and a good electric fence, is very important. Because sometimes this crop is high and it can be off the wires. You'd want a good solid mains fence that will actually blow them away if they won't be going at it again.
Not that blown away now.
Well, no, okay, but but our bales of silage.
They know it's on.
They know it's on. Once they know it's on, happy. But just grazing away at the water troughs and the bales, you'll see the bales as well. That is picture perfect.
Yeah, that's picture perfect. Yeah.
Bales are put out. They're put out when the plant was actually sowed, and they're in a row. And you just move them on and move them on and move them on. And then on a dry day, if you feel like some of those, I'm not going to use all those bales.
Okay, surplus.
A dry day and take them out. But
okay,
once they're in the field, you're not going in when it's wet. I can go in when it's dry and bring them out if I need to.
Okay.
It's a brilliant idea.
Perfect.
That's just a run back area. So we're saying we're going to start this crop, say the 1st of October. We're going to eat this bit of grass the first day.
Yeah, on my left-hand side, yeah.
Barely inside, that they're only barely putting the nose in and touching off it, and start slowly and very slowly.
Okay.
You know what, you'll increase and increase and increase and increase. One guy used to say to me, when you see stalk left over, when you increase in, when do I stop? But when you see a lot of stalk left over on a grazing, they're getting too much. It's simple as that.
Okay.
Like they'll get used to it, but after 3 or 4 weeks, you'll see where you're going. Some lads will only be allocating a certain amount because I want to get to the end of the field, but there's no use leaving a lot of stalk behind because it's pure waste.
It's waste of your, yeah, agree.
That is an absolute.
That's what you're talking about, yeah.
Tremendous utilization. Like usually what will happen, you move that fence, they'll go in and they'll graze off the leaf first. That's the nicest bit, lovely protein. They might lie down, and when they get up, they'll finish off the stalk. Really, as you come in the morning, there should be very little stalk left. There should be some silage left as well. I'd never see, that's a sign that if it's all eaten and the silage, they're not getting enough of something. So I'd rather be feeding a bale for every 2 days or whatever it is, but you'd like to, so they're never gorging themselves. So you open it up, they go in and they tear into and break into it. You don't want them.
Yeah. So after you do your 7 to 10 days in their adjustment to get used to the crop, then you start monitoring, are they getting enough? Or they, that's where you watch your bale and you watch, is there too much stock being left behind?
Yes, that's definitely. Okay. It's actually probably just husbandry, you'll be watching the crop husbandry, the animal husbandry, and both. And of course that's a long feed phase. You see, that's why even on a wet day, if that's so long, they're not going to damage it because they've so much space to go up and down. But if you have a shorts, they're always on the same spot and moving in a foot, and they're always mucking.
Yeah, that's that we have to avoid. Yeah, this is the problem, the possible problems, but
that's the full stomach, introduce slowly, build 7 days. Bolus minerals, probably came across it already.
There was
summary planning, most important. And do it early. Don't decide, wake up one morning, hits you on the top of your forehead. Oh, I think I'll do a brassica. It should be done long ago. If you're we all know we're going to do it and we're not going to do it, but plan. What's the field? Is that field need to be reseeded anyway? Can I go from grass to red start or whatever or kale to a grass again? What are going to be the benefits? Is it the right field? But if you do, attention to detail is very important, and even on the sowing thing, get everything right and it should work out for you. But
just on one of those things you mentioned before on the planning one, you could have a very good relationship, let's say, with a tillage farmer next door, and you could be putting it in their stubbles. The thing to remember, I remember before, our water and our fencing, there won't be in a tillage field as often as there would be in a grass field. So that's something to watch when you're planning. Yeah,
because here in Germany, we do a lot of these catch crops, and the biggest catch crop sale we have is actually a forage rape and a leafy turnip together, and it covers with a glass.
Okay.
But a lot of that's going into areas where they have no animals, and then they're renting it out, and it's often sheepmen actually, but there is no fencing and no water. So it's something to have to look at.
Okay.
But they're getting a lot of tillage farms like it because it's actually giving a benefit to the soil, and they're getting a few quid. They can rent it out for a month or two and sow a spring crop.
Okay. But, Dermot, I'm just conscious there. We're coming. We're after time is after flying by, so there's just a couple of questions there I just want to bring up, right?
Okay.
We'll try and keep these short. Any options for companion crops with a brassica?
Yeah. Sometimes the companion crop can actually take from the crop. So
Okay.
you don't want to put up in something that's so aggressive that it takes over from the red start or whatever itself. But we'd have people that might be throwing a couple of kgs of maybe Italian, but then
Okay.
Italian can be very messy if you're going back into a grass the year after. So my
Right. Yeah.
um,
One to avoid.
throw in a few Swedes or purple tops to just take up a little space.
Okay.
They'll do a bit of filling around underneath. A bit of leafy turnip can help, but something
Okay.
like your kale or your red start is going to grow 3, 4, 5 foot tall. So something that can fill in underneath.
Grant.
It's not a
Okay.
bad idea, especially for mucking and poaching but you have to think what is that going to do to me? If it's a grass, is it going to be harder to kill for next year? And they can be.
Okay. Okay. Next one, wait, from Neil, from Direct Drilling. What's the thoughts on slug pellets in the slot with the seed or on the top?
Sometimes in the direct seeders, actually, the slugs often follow the line.
I've
So
seen that, yeah.
yeah,
And they just gobble, gobble. It's like Pac-Man.
follow down the whole line up along. But
Yeah.
you could broadcast as well. It can be quite unfortunate to get a problem with slugs. Like I'm 20 years at this and I haven't seen that many slugs. Depends on the weather
Okay.
and the ground. But I think sometimes fellas put out slug pellets that mightn't be needed. There's always a few
Okay.
slugs. Really what you should do, like the tillage men would do, is they put out some bait um, under a plastic bag, and if they find something like 20 or whatever of slugs, then they know there's a problem, and then they'll broadcast.
Okay.
It can be quite
So,
expensive putting it out if you don't need it, you know.
okay. So find it. Find it.
If you think the field is prone to it, I'd say yes, yeah.
Okay. And Frank has a question here. What would you advise for adapting stock to forage brassicas where a grass run back is not available?
So what you say? What I've no run back.
So you've no run back. So what would you advise for adapting stock? So we're on our 5 years with the crop, and how would we introduce them?
I actually have some guys that, of course, this is planning as well. But what they'll do is
Yeah.
they'll leave an acre at the bottom of the field with nothing in it. All right.
Okay.
And they'll
Yeah.
sow the rest of the field, and that's the area where they'll put in their starter circular feeder and start them slowly. I know then there's other lads that just have to let them in. They need space, but there's not a lot you can do in that situation. Or you let them in and make sure if you put in lots of bales in, even if you do go in for the first 100 yards and put in a lot of bales, they won't really eat the red start or whatever, the brassica, till they get used to it. So keep those circular feeders full.
Okay.
And actually then they'll start eating a bit more and they get used to it. But keep the fibre into them big time as they go in.
Okay.
Don't forget the fibre in
Okay.
a couple of weeks at least anyway.
Okay. So I'm just trying to read this one question. I've 10 acres of Bangor fodder beets sown 3 months so far. We'll try and eat with cattle instead of pulling. As I say, Bangor is the variety all sown. Yeah. Any tips on such a massive crop of feed?
It can lead to an awful lot of muck.
Stomach upsets.
Yeah, stomach upsets, especially down to the clay. And
yeah.
It's a very good crop, but if you get very wet weather, usually you're only giving them a drill a day or one row a day. So they're actually moving through that very slowly, and it can lead to a lot of slop.
Okay.
But it is highly good feed, only that it's very slow, I find.
Okay. Another one there for the sheep. Do sheep on Swedes need silage hay in their diet? Yes, I would say.
I would. It mightn't be an awful lot, but it's no harm. It's no harm to have it. It's really got to do with the animal. Like the animal's stomach tells them, I want a bit of fiber. So you'll actually see them going over eating the ditch. But so if you actually have some sort of fiber in the field, they mightn't eat an awful lot of it, but it should be there available to eat.
Okay. Okay. Quick one from John. Can you sow red clover now?
Yeah, red clover. We would be sowing red clover for silage. Yes, probably something.
Okay.
In another
webinar. Yeah. Good.
But,
and someone here is sowing 10 acres of turnip called Massive tomorrow. 2 kgs to the acre, I'm told. What tips have you for me for utilization of crop, or any advice on the crop?
It's a turnip. It must be a
Yeah.
stubble turnip. So.
Yeah.
Stubble turnip is like anything like that. I wonder if it's for sheep or cattle. I presume it might be for sheep.
It hasn't said here in this
Might be
question now.
block graze. They usually block graze, but the problem I find with sheep, they usually go in and eat all the leaf, which is the high protein, and then eat it. So they're
Leave the
lightweight,
stubble turnip.
up and down. So, but throw them some still.
The allocation.
The allocation.
Yeah, the allocation would be important for that, to get them to utilize.
I find sheep are always used done in block, so it might be
Okay.
a 2 acre. So that's the way it's done. If they, really, ideally, you should be actually allocating every day.
Okay.
But I've ever seen sheep and they usually block. But
Okay.
yeah, but still, all these things that we're after saying, you still would say fiber, water. You know, they're all animals. It's all the same.
Okay, and the last one, which we didn't get to finish, was, we'll finish on this one. Thank you all for your great questions. What is the best time to graze lambs on a crop of interval intended for breeding in order to reduce the photosynthesis risks? Is there a best time to graze lambs?
They must be breeding lambs. Usually they're
Yeah.
very high. It's very high because it affects the estrogen, so you shouldn't really be in the field when you're thinking of breeding. It does affect
Okay.
the big time. You want to be taking them out before it. It's the same
Okay.
for clover as well. That does affect them, red clover especially. So
Okay.
I'd probably wait until they were nearly in lamb before I'd actually do it.
Okay.
Or do it about 3 or 4 weeks beforehand to try and put a bit of weight on them before you put them to the ram.
Great, great. I think we've answered as many as we can at the time. Sure, Dermot, stay chatting for it, but we've only got another 2 or 3 minutes.
Questions. Yeah. If anyone wants any questions or wants us to just contact Germal ourselves, we have a forager that goes out every month. If people want to sign up to that, go to our site and you'll get information. You can sign up for our monthly
emails.
Yeah. We're at a couple of thousand people we send them to. There's lots of information and people can contact us. Sandra and myself are hoping to do something maybe on the 13th of August. Maybe on autumn receipt, as we said, but like if someone wants something else done, we've no problem changing that around.
Yeah, just to remind people that are on this webinar that when you finish up, there will be a survey. We'd like your positives and negatives. Did you like the way it went? And in that you can put in your comments. We hope to do autumn reseeding, but if something comes out tops that's more popular that people want discussed, we'll definitely consider it. So, you know, as I say, it's a survey monkey at the end of the webinar. Please fill it in, please.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great. Thank you, Dermot, and look forward to the next one. Exactly. Thanks to all our listeners, and I hope you all got something out of it. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.